Good morning, Jags. This is Fahad. Today is Monday, February 22nd. Let's get started. Inflation, inflation, inflation. That's the theory. That is what's been playing out in global equities market or in the overnight session, whether you look at China, whether you look at Europe. And that's exactly what was playing out last week in the equity markets in the US as well, for the most part. Do you know that in overnight session, copper futures in Shanghai were up almost 6%? 6% gain in copper futures in a single session over in Shanghai. And similarly, it's playing out in nickel. Nickel is making multi-year highs. Tin is making multi-year highs. The entire metal and mining complex is basically just ripping. And then crude oil has sort of taken a back seat just slightly, a little bit. But crude oil is also, essentially on the uptrend, making higher highs and higher lows for quite some time. And even today, when the equity market futures are selling off, crude oil is actually positive. It's up 1%. Now, I mentioned multiple times this already, and a big case for inflation was presented in the Jaguar first quarter outlook as well. So I think Jag clients are fully in sync with what the risk parameters are in the market, what you should be careful of. But I just want to reiterate that the way the rising inflation is affecting the equity markets is tech sector. They are going after tech sector rather than anything else. Commodities are ripping higher. Commodity is the place where everybody is making money. That's where you've got momentum, that you got prices rising. On other hands, it's the tech sector that is getting hurt the most. Anytime when inflation shows another sign of accelerating data. We're going to continue to get far more economic data around this, and let's see how this will affect NASDAQ and all that going forward. Now, with that said, here's a particular chart of interest that comes from Bank of America research, in which they talk, it's a raw material aggregator. So in other words, basically everything, particularly on the metals and mining complex that goes into manufacturing business, they put the whole basket together to see how the coatings raw material aggregator, particularly, which goes into semi-manufacturing, which goes into industrial production and auto manufacturing, machinery, and all kinds of things. How is that doing? And take a look at that massive spike in the first quarter of 2021. You can see how this is not a monthly chart. This is a quarterly chart. And this goes back to the point about how metals and minings are so hot. We are seeing more than 4%, almost 5% increase in the first quarter in the entire basket of raw material, particularly coating products that go into manufacturing business. And this has reversed the course of last almost 2 years of negative growth, year-over-year change of negative growth on a quarterly basis. So this is very, very strong. Now, what does this mean? Because we're talking about coatings business, and that's what brings me to this chart, AXTA Coating Systems, symbol AXTA. This company provides coatings for auto manufacturers, and in turn, whenever polyethylene prices are rising and the demand is also outstripping supply, this company benefits from those trends. And this stock has recently pulled back from a high of 131, came down to about 26, 27, formed a base, double bottom as well. Then earnings came out last week. Volume surged after earnings came out, and now is starting to break out from the base. And given this inflation theory that is playing out in the background, this will likely continue to run all the way back to new 52-week high. The stock closed at 28.46 on Friday. I expect we will see this thing above 32, maybe even $33 per share rather pretty soon. Couple things that you should know. First of all, on the demand side of things, aside from the tightness in supply and the prices going up, this company reported earnings last week. The revenues came in at 1.07 billion versus 1.03 billion, so very clean beat. They posted Q4 EBITDA of 252 million versus 232 million estimate. And then the Q1 EBITDA guidance was raised to 160 million versus 152 million estimate. Now, remember, this company had previously actually delayed the filing of its earnings release, which was supposed to happen on February 1st, but because of various reasons related to operational issues, they had delayed this, and then they came out and they basically beat the estimates across the board. I was looking at the earnings transcript and the management commentary, particularly on the demand side, to see what the company has to say. And there's a lot of positive trends that they talked about over here. So, for example, they said that they believe that for AXTA Coating Systems, the end market demand trends were solid and even strong in many markets they serve. In the fourth quarter, all of our industrial sub-businesses grew net sales versus the prior period, showing the resilience of this end market in the face of pandemic and pushing new sales to new quarterly highs in many cases. AXTA performance also exceeded broader industrial production metrics, with Q4 industrial production up modest 0.3% globally. And then they went on to say that similarly in the transportation coating segment, they're continuing to see a V-shaped recovery that started really in April and May, and it has continued. They also talked about the growth was led by Asia Pacific. Basically, that means China and a bunch of emerging markets there with a 4.3% increase. China was at 5.9%, and so on and so on. So it's very, very strong. Similarly, in the commercial end market, they also said the global truck production increased by 13%, led by 20% jump in Asia. So across all regions and across all product categories, this company is seeing strong benefits of rising coating demand, but then at the same time, now the prices have started to go up sharply as well. Bank of America had an interesting note out, and I'm just going to read a quick paragraph over here from them. This came out actually this morning, and they say, I quote, North America polyethylene spot prices remained unchanged for most grades amid the winter storm, with producers finding difficulties completing February and March orders. We estimate that over 80% of U.S. polyethylene capacity will be offline or impacted for up to 2 weeks. This could prove optimistic as well, as plant restarts are prone to issues, particularly if it was a sudden shutdown. This should support strong price increases for March. The combination of a strong demand, tight global supply, and shipping and above average outages leads our 2021 polyethylene outlook higher, and we are upgrading stocks accordingly. So basically, they are upgrading all kinds of polyethylene stocks this morning. What does that mean? So if you go to LYB, LyondellBasell, take a look at this with a huge bullish engulfing candle on Friday, a clean breakout through $100 per share. And this is beneficiary of these very rising prices that we are looking at. Similarly, if you go to WLK, which is Westlake Chemical, bullish engulfing candle on Friday. Expect this to break out through $90 resistance and make a new 52-week high. And my favorite is AXTA Coating Systems, because I believe this has pulled back. And so the MACD and the RSI levels have reset. Earnings is already out of the way. The company is very positive on the outlook, and I believe this goes to 32. Last thing I will also say is that AXTA coating system has always been a target of M&A rumors. And if you notice, in the month of April, there is significant amount of call accumulation in the month in April 28, 29, and 30 strike calls. So who knows? There could be in play today, or there could be simply somebody betting on, speculating that we could see M&A here, maybe a combination with Sherwin-Williams or somebody else. So keep an eye on this one. I think this goes to near 52-week high. That's it from me. Let's go to Jay.
Morning, everyone. Today, taking a look at orthopediatrics, ticker KIDS. Last time I covered this in conversations was way back on October 1st. And just as a heads up, in early December, the stock did see some weakness after a short seller, Culper Research, came out with a short report highlighting channel stuffing, the company overstating revenues. So, unfortunately, that is something to keep in mind. They haven't talked about it in a couple months, but that could always come back up, unfortunately. So anyway, if we go back to that Jaguar media post from October, we mention a new growth driver called ApiFix. And this was done, if you backtrack, this was done via an acquisition last April where it bought the company ApiFix for about $2 million. The company has a system called the Minimally Invasive Deformity Correction System, or MIDC, which is a deformity correction system device that enables surgeons to perform a novel surgical treatment providing permanent curve correction while retaining spine flexibility with a less invasive approach. ApiFix became the company's 35th surgical system. And last week, OrthoPediatrics announced the launch of ApiFix.com, and that website's goal is to educate all parties about the company's new alternative for the treatment of progressive adolescent idiopathic scoliosis, or AIS. In the press release, the company noted that it has recruited 20 leading clinical centers in the United States to enter data related to the use of the ApiFix system into a post-approval study registry. On the new website, there are 12 centers listed on its Find a Provider page, and the assumption is that all of these centers have received approval, meaning that they are approved to do the surgery. And other hospitals may still be working through the approval process, so that 12 number may be even going higher. Truist was out with a note late last week saying, interestingly, at those 12 centers, the company lists 25 surgeons in total on the website. If the remainder of the 20 recruited centers look like these 12, we believe there could be over 40 surgeons who have access to ApiFix in 2021. One of the provider names on the list of clinical centers is Dr. Baron Lahner, a leading surgeon who treats scoliosis and spinal deformity patients who we spoke with in mid-2020 about the product potential. They remind you that Dr. Lahner suggested that he alone plans to perform a high volume of ApiFix procedures that could generate between 1.8 and 2 million in annual revenue. Like I said, the company bought ApiFix for 2 million, so this surgeon alone could be doing basically the purchase price in 1 year. So while not every surgeon will have the same level of volume as Dr. Lahner, we think, Truist thinks, given that the company already has 12 centers and 25 surgeons beginning to use ApiFix, is another data point that suggests our current estimate in 2021 may be too low. And the last thing, I think I see that BTIG is raising their price target today to 58. I haven't seen the note, but I will try and collect that. And if there's anything interesting there, I will also share it in the chat room.
Wow, that's very impressive update on the business. I have one quick question. Given this view that you just presented, is there still a risk for the short case that was made by whoever that person was or the firm was previously, or is that somehow basically now in the back rear view mirror?
I don't think it's in the, unfortunately, I don't think it's in the back burner. I think that, Culpa Research will, I have not seen them talk about this specific product or this specific catalyst. So unfortunately, I do think that, the story for them is not over. You could definitely see a tweet coming at any time, essentially highlighting the exact same things, overstating revenue, etc.
Very, very nice. Great stuff. Thanks for covering this and providing the update since our last discussion in June. And it's been a fantastic stock. I know firsthand that there's several JAG clients that have liked this story for more than 2 years since we first covered this. And so they will appreciate this update as well. Guys, this is ridiculous. My mouse just froze on my screen. I can talk, and this is clearly recording right now, but I am unable to move any windows or anything on my screen. It just froze. So this is ridiculous. It's not going anywhere. It's not moving. I may have to reboot my machine entirely. You see right here on the screen?
Yep.
It's not going anywhere. It's not moving anywhere, so I can't move this. Chronicle, you're there?
I have a setup, but it doesn't have to go right away if it's
Yeah,
not convenient.
yeah, I don't know what will work, but either we can talk right now with your setup, or we can
Sure.
push it out tomorrow, or because if we talk right now, chances are I'm not going to be able to do anything with my screen, but we can talk about that stock, or we can just put it off until tomorrow. What you think?
Tomorrow it is then, because
All right, sounds
it's technically it's not set up yet.
perfect. Okay, so we're gonna then stop over here. I apologize, guys. My computer is frozen. It's recording, but it's just not letting me move my cursor anyplace else. So we're going to stop over here. That's it from us. We'll see you in the chat room shortly.